Today, I wanted to talk a little bit and have a discussion around lifecycle management of guest users within a tenant. And within that, I'll give some context for what we are thinking all up around identity governance and show you some of the new capabilities that we are going to ship fairly soon, and then where we think we are heading, and get your feedback and insight as to, okay, whether those are the right things to be focusing on or not. So hopefully this will be an interactive session. Mark Wall on my team will be here. I'm sure most of you know him. He'll walk you through some of the demos as we go through the session. So feel free to ask questions as we go. All right. So the main thing is, how can partners like yourself help customers with lifecycle management? What do you guys do today for guest users with customers? Anything? Nothing?
We don't have guest users.
You don't have guest users? It's not supported. So that's why the customer says, I want to have all these partners I want to collaborate with, including yourself. We tell them no, right? We know it's a challenge today in enterprise. And when we talk to customers, often they tell us it's one of the biggest pain points that they have. They have processes for regular employees, but for guests, they often have to either add them as employees within their tenants or their on-premises AD, and then manage them like employees. However, when those people leave the organization, it's not clear. You have all these accounts authenticating to your resources. How do you get rid of them? How do you know actually they haven't left the company that they work for, right? So it's a big challenge and a potential security risk. So one of the things that we're trying to do in Azure Active Directory is, as Sarah talked about earlier, we're introducing the B2B capability. So the user authenticates against their home tenant or whatever. And we in Azure AD, we are going to provide some more controls around the access so that when they leave the organization, you can block their access, you can remove them, or you can have them do certain things like attestation, etc. Now, we are not only doing it for guests, right? It's part of a broader picture around identity governance that we've started working on. And so the B2B guesting is just one piece of it. So first, I want to give a little context for how we think about identity governance that Alex mentioned earlier. The first principle or thing that we want to do, or we hear customers ask or talk about and ask, who has access to what resources? So that's the first thing. So how do we help customers or partners like yourself understand, or help these customers know who has access to what resources? What are those people or those users doing with these resources, right? Do you have effective controls? Are there policies? Are there rules? Are you doing attestation on them, etc.? When somebody wants access to a resource, is there an approval process? Is it auditable, etc.? How do you provide all those controls within Azure Active Directory today to help organizations meet all these certifications and other requirements, right? I talk to customers and they say, hey, often when they're going to a governance solution or they're looking for a governance solution, the first thing is because either they failed an audit and then the board wants them to go figure out how they meet their audit findings in the next year. With every 3 months, you need to come. What are you doing? What's the progress? Or they were small ad hoc, they bought other companies and now they need to grow up, and how do they put effective processes in there, right? So these are the four main pillars that is going to drive our governance capabilities. Clearly, we don't have all the capabilities on day one. We are not going to have all on day one. There are partners like SailPoint, Mada, Sabian, a whole bunch of people that, help with governance today that are providing solutions out there. But over time, we are going to add more capabilities to our solution. So within that context of how you do governance all up, the first thing that we hear when it comes to guests is around, we are scared, right? You mentioned earlier, we don't do it because we don't know how to do it, but companies are scared about guest users. What are they going to do? Are they going to get access to resources? You think of the Edward Snowden case, right? He's a contractor within a NSA, and he was able to get access to a whole bunch of stuff. And how do we prevent that from happening within our own organization, right? Office groups is coming. Who is scared of office groups or who loves office groups? Is that a sarcastic laugh or pardon me? He voted for both, right? But what are your customers telling you, or what's their opinion about office group? Okay.
They implement them. They're being implemented at the grassroots willy-nilly.
Yeah. So yeah, we go ahead. Okay. Right. So there's a broad spectrum of feelings, right? And when we talk to customers, when we Ignite last year, some people were excited by it, others were also very scared. It's like, wow, so meaning all employees are now going to be able to invite anybody from other companies? What if the documents they're sharing are confidential documents, right? How do we prove to the auditors that we have processed for these confidential information, right? And so the burden on us is, as the identity provider and a solution provider, how do we help customers to actually help ease some of that concern? Because for productivity purposes, organizations need people to collaborate, right? But how do you put the right safeguards in there, right? And so that's one of the things they are working on. So we want to make sure that when guests collaborate, you can still have the right controls. They can have the report and they can have the lifecycle management on that. Self-service capabilities. Often it's like IT cannot manage all the office groups out there, right? How do they delegate group management, but also have controls like, request the group owners attest to members of the group on a periodic basis, right? So that, at least there's some responsibility. If a group owner knows that every 3 months or every quarter they're going to have to attest, then they are more likely to be more responsible about who they invite, etc., into their groups. And they'll be reporting based on that, right? And so, to sort of give you a good idea of how we do this, one of the things is, okay, we've talked about attestation. The other thing is, what's your compliance policy for sharing documents? Today, what do you guys do? Email. So people come in and say, hey, make sure you don't leak confidential information. How about in healthcare? What do you guys do? Anybody do healthcare related stuff, right? HIPAA regulations, right? So there are things around making sure people understand the requirements or the sensitivity of data that they may be accessing or the resources that they're going to be accessing, so that from a compliance perspective, you can hold them accountable, right? That's something that today we haven't provided capabilities for years, so customers are doing ad hoc. If the auditor comes and say, hey, did this guest person know that they needed to treat the customer data confidentially and secure it? The answer will be no. Yeah, we told them, but I never knew that, right? So how do you make sure there are all these policies and stuff in the organization? So the first thing that we're going to do as part of this in the life cycle is, when guest users are coming into your organization, how do you make them aware of the policies and things within your organization? We call that capability terms of use, right? How do you require, configure, enforce, and audit compliance with company policies, right? And it's a new capability. It's been in private preview for a little while, but think of the scenario where you can set a policy to say all guests that come into a tenant or all guests that access a particular application have to read and accept a particular terms of use for your company, right? We make the process very easy. It's PDF that you may get from the legal department. The PDF then gets uploaded, and using the same conditional access framework that you guys use in a lab, when the user goes to sign in, they will be able to accept the policy or the terms of use, it gets recorded, and if they don't accept, they don't get access to the resources, right? That's an example of an effective control that we're going to be able to provide, or you can help your customers institute to first make sure that when guests are coming in, they know the policies of the company so that if they don't meet it, you can either go fire them or look, you accepted this on this date and you are no longer accepting, following that policy. Does this make sense? Do you guys think there's something that's going to help you? Yeah.
I know that people always read those terms.
Yeah.
Or do they just click, I agree?
So one of the feedback that we had is you could have it just click I accept, or one of the things that we're going to provide as part of the controls is that require that you actually scroll through. Like we work in one hospital that said they want to make sure people actually scroll through before they accept, right? And so how do we provide those levels of capability for you to be able to do that?
So, what is being enforced at just at the Azure tenant, or is it also going to affect users who hit SharePoint Online?
So these users, any service that authenticates with Azure AD, so SharePoint Online, etc., it will hit them because we're using the conditional access framework. Now, to actually show you how it works, Mark, you want to do a little demo to see the stuff working in real world scenario, accessing a resource?
Yeah, so let me show you what it would look like. So,
Your question.
Does that require conditional access? And what is the impact on needing premium or not for this feature?
Yeah, so this feature requires conditional access, and so you need a AD premium to use it. Pardon me?
Only to succeed.
Only to what?
Only to succeed.
Yeah.
yeah. So we can set a terms of use, and again, I've got one here. It's a PDF file. It's pretty simple. I just made it in Word. You can have whatever document you want. And I had this terms of use show up here when a user accepts a B2B guest invite. Now, we're not limited to that scenario. That's just one example. But I can just go down here and scroll to the end and say, yeah, I'm going to accept that. And then after I accept that, it's wherever it's going to take me for the B2B invite scenario, which I think will be the access panel. Now, again, I can set up other scenarios besides that one as well. So I can configure multiple terms of use, different ones I've been trying out for guests. I can configure for different kinds of applications. So only for SharePoint Online, only for Salesforce, only for any of your own applications. And then to come back to your question before, those are then linked to the applications through these conditional access policies. So you can say, well, I have this policy that's only for guests on non-registered devices going to Salesforce. And then this policy will then get triggered. The user will have to see and consent to that terms of use on the way to the app. Is there a question over there?
Yeah, how does, around customization of that page, is there any ability to customize what the look of that terms of use page is? And how do you deal with multiple language issues if I need
Yeah.
conversions based on
Yeah, great question. So the first easiest one, multiple languages. So we'll support multi-language. So you can upload different language versions of a terms of use document, and we'll detect the language that the user is accessing the application with and render the appropriate language for it. So one terms of use can have multiple language versions associated with it. Right, that's one. The second question was?
So there's a question.
Customize, right? So customization, all the branding on that page that Mark showed, it's all based on the customization you do for the access panel experience. So if you've done company branding with your logo and all that stuff, that'll be the experience that they see. So it'll be Contoso's tenant branded information, and they just see the terms of use in there.
With the new experience, or just using the old experience?
The access panel experience?
Or do you mean the sign-in experience?
Exactly.
Yeah, so right now it's in the old experience. Before we actually go GA with it, would align with the new sign-in experience, it will be consistent.
Yeah, because we'll have different ways of rendering it. So I'll have a narrow way of rendering it. So if you're like on an iPhone or something, when you go and you're doing your sign-in, we want to be able to present your terms of use without having a little teeny tiny PDF file on there. So you can blow it up and actually read it if you are into reading legal documents. Question?
So this is all triggered at login time to that particular application.
Yeah.
Outside the policy.
Yeah.
And once I say yes, I agree,
Yeah.
it kind of goes away,
Yeah.
and I don't have to do it
You don't have to do it again. It's recorded.
If those terms of use are updated over time, is there a mechanism you can say, okay, force everybody to?
Yep.
Yep. So when you update that policy, we create a new version, and you can say this version should be required or supersedes the other one, or this version doesn't need to be replace the previous one, only just for a new one. Because there are two cases. You could have a case where the whole policy changed, or you missed a typo on one thing and want to give the flexibility for both scenarios. So we think it's a cool capability that first make sure people are compliant. And also, as GDPR is coming, one of the requirements for GDPR is making sure people are aware of the privacy policies and how the company is going to use their data. This becomes one unique way or a neat way of being able to present those policies so those users are aware of those policies before. Yeah.
Is this feature an extension of the Intune terms of use feature, or is it separate?
Yeah. Question: is this extension of Intune? It's separate, and actually we're working on unifying it, the two together.
It kind of sounds the same.
Yeah.
Just hearing you talk about it.
Yeah, it's similar, but today in the Intune terms of use, it's just pure text, right? That you can set, and you can set it on a per device or user. And in this case, it's all PDF, so you can take the policy from your legal department. You have more richness in the content and the formatting, and then you'll be able to apply in the same scenario. So we actually work with them to make sure it works. So there'll be some guidance around that. Okay. So now that the users have accepted the policies, now they're in the tenant. How do you make sure that they are consistently being reviewed and that their access is appropriate, right, in terms of an ongoing basis? We call this new capability access reviews. I don't call attestation or whatever, I think. But it's the idea of how do they still need access, right? If you've given them access standalone to particular apps, you'll be able to trigger these access reviews. Or if they are members of a group, you'll be able to trigger the guest users actually attest themselves, or the group owners attest for membership within the group, or you can select particular individuals to attest to those capabilities. It works for all users, and we've done some unique scenarios for guest users so that automatically we detect who the guests are and apply the policy to them. There's a question there, and then we'll show you how that works in a second.
Will this extend to being able to certify on-prem identities?
Yep. So the question is, will this only work cloud, or will it also work on premises? It will be able to work with on-prem identities that gets synced up to AAD. We'll be able to run that attestation on it, give you a result, and then you'll be able to use, we'll provide a bunch of APIs that you can actually partial, that you can actually go apply in the on-premises world in the first instance. Over time, we'll provide a way for you to automatically reach directly back on premises to clean it up. So in the sync, to get the group members, the groups need to come to AAD. So today, they'll come through AAD Connect. You don't need MIM for any of these scenarios.
And one thing to add to that, we have some samples. If you're interested, we can show you some sample PowerShell. So if you have some other system of record, maybe the group comes out of Oracle or SAP or some weird thing, then yeah, you can get the changes back from the attestation and then send just those changes back to your system of record on-prem.
So this solution does not presume or preclude you using whatever, whether it's SailPoint or some other tool, right? We are trying to provide this option also if you're just using pure AAD. How do you do governance within AAD? And if you have other systems, you're going to provide the flexibility and the capability for you to integrate with those other systems. So it's up to your particular use case or your scenarios that you want to address.
Yeah, we'll be providing the APIs that we mentioned before to SailPoint, to our other partners, so that if they say, hey, we want to kick off one of these access reviews from within an external governance system, or maybe Archer runs and it triggers something, then yeah, we can do that. We'll show you some APIs for that.
There's a hand in the back there that I may have missed. Okay. right? So, Mark, let's walk through the demo how we do that. And one of the key principles is make it as easy as possible for these processes or reviews to be created.
Okay, so there's a couple ways you can do the review. One of the ways that we're seeing a lot of interest for the guests is to actually ask guests to confirm their own access. And so we're working on that scenario right now. I have a couple different ideas for how to do that. Here's one view in which you can send guests a question. It comes in email, could be every quarter, every month. We have some scripts for that. And then you can say, do you still need access? Now here's kind of a generic full view in which you can see the user and they're just attesting to themselves. I haven't signed in lately. Oh yeah, I guess I invited you yesterday. So we can see also recommendations. One of the things that's very important for us is to optimize the end user experience, whether you're asking the guests themselves for review or asking, let's say, a group owner or someone else in the organization to review. I don't want to simply give them a big list of 10,000 names and say, here you go, here's 10,000 names, tell me what you think. Attestation fatigue will set in, people are like, approve all. So we give them some highlights. One of the highlights we have is, have you signed in to the directory at all? Also highlights around, have you signed into a particular application? So if you're, for example, attesting guest access to Salesforce, you can say, this guest hasn't actually used Salesforce. Maybe they were just inadvertently put in a group or someone thought they might have needed access, but it turns out they didn't. So you can do those cleanup. And then, of course, you can provide justifications. Still need this for the demos. And of course, all this then is audited. So you can go in and have these attestation campaigns run and recertify the guests. You could also have a group of owners go and review all the office groups or the security groups or groups originating from on-prem. And then when that review completes, then you'll see the audit history for a particular access review. So let's go into guest user lifecycle. You'll see here some of the new things we're trying out here using a programs and controls model so that organizations that are subject to multiple different compliance initiatives like GDPR or Sarbanes-Oxley or PCI can start to separate out why are we doing these things, what are these access reviews for, and just scope down the access reviews they need for showing to a particular auditor or showing as part of a particular compliance driver. And then here we can look at the results of this review, the one we did earlier, and see what happened. So we have a whole bunch of users, they haven't been notified, they haven't done anything yet, but then we can look at the user we saw earlier and see the history for them. The network is slow.
Kind of slow.
Oh, there he is. Okay, and then we can see the result, who reviewed it, the reason why. Again, this is available. You can pull it out as a CSV file and show it to your auditor, or push it off into a big governance archiving tool, or we can also have APIs. If you want to say, I would need to take the results from this and send it back to a SailPoint or an Oracle or an SAP or a Greenlight or whatever, then we'll have interfaces to do that as well. We also have a few other scripts that we'll be talking about in the weeks to come that go and tie in access reviews to other scenarios, like cleaning up the guests from unmanaged tenants or being able to use this for specific applications or specific uses of office groups for sponsors.
So one of the key things is, just before question, one of the key things that Access highlights, we've heard a lot about machine learning earlier. So this is an area we're going to invest a lot in machine learning to sort of look at heuristics about whether you should give the person access or not. Because the constant feedback we get is, we don't know whether this person should have access or not. How do you provide more insight or information to the reviewer or the non-IT person to be able to give them access? So we'll be able to provide more context. They haven't accessed the resource. They've been removed from their guest tenant or from their home tenant, those kinds of things to help inform that review. The question.
Can you automatically deny access if a review was triggered, but it hasn't been reviewed? The user hasn't been reviewed, so it's been ignored.
Yeah, so one of the things, there are two ways you can do that. The question was, can you revoke access if it's being ignored? There are two ways. One, once you have a recommendation in there, so you saw a recommendation deny. So if that recommendation is there, you'll be able to set a policy, say, automatically apply the recommendations from an IT perspective at the end. The second thing you can do is that the results or the recommendations come to the IT, and the IT can choose, okay, I want to apply them or not, right? So you have that flexibility to do that.
The
One of the things that we're working with some of our customers is doing a soft delete for the guest. If the guest doesn't respond, maybe they've left that company, then we just go and soft delete them. Now, if they call back and complain, I was away on vacation, here, we can rehydrate their entry and they get back all their group memberships, everything as they were before. But otherwise, that intro gets timed out after 90 days. And the concern that customers have about the growth of their directory over time now starts to become manageable.
So the question is, would this cover all applications and environment or not? Is that a good summary of that, right? Right. So the first scenario that we are optimizing first is access for AD integrated apps. That's the first thing we are optimizing. So apps in AD or groups that could have originated on-premise that come to the cloud, you'll be able to provide it all in the UI. But like Mark mentioned, the second thing is you can bring a list of users using our APIs or users that are in particular apps. You can bring that list into using our APIs to do attestation on them, we'll trigger that email, all that stuff, and you get the results and can go apply to them. So I feel with those two things, we can cover the broader spectrum. It may not be as nice for the on-premises, not AD integrated app, but will provide a way for you to stitch those together.
So do you have ability to like read that files, connectors?
Yeah, so I mean, there's a couple of ways in which we can get the data into the system, and we have some examples we can show you for that. But yeah, we're not saying that this is just for Azure AD Access. It's just where we're starting because of these new risks. People are concerned. Hey, I'd love to do B2B guests, but how do I keep the guests under control? And that's a problem they haven't solved. You know, I can't go get Greenlight to solve that problem for me because Greenlight does SAP and SAP doesn't know about guests. I can't get an on-prem product to do my B2B guests. So we can do this, and over time, as we build out our extensions and reach into the SaaS applications, the other identity providers, as well as the on-premises products, we think that having this model of being able to show not just here's a list of users and permissions, but how were they accessing the app, what were they doing, were they actually active, we're going to be able to bring that information in from even the on-premises apps as well.
How are you handling repeats? Users, moving users, and how do you know that they are truly no longer being used?
All right. So this is one of the things that in Sarat's earlier session, everyone was there, we talked about this whole staged life cycle. So one of the things that we'll be providing is a way to stage them. The first thing is to say, hey, if they don't delete them, it's a soft delete. They go into a potentially disabled state for a period of time. And then after a certain period of time, you go remove them. Because we are hearing requirements in different stages where some customers, like a big advertising firm, they work with so many people over the world, they cannot keep track. So what they want is actually use attestation as a way to send email and based on lack of response, put them in a queue of potential to be deleted or group of people that may no longer work with them. And then they go into a staging phase and then they set policy. If those people don't log in after X period of time, then go permanently delete them. So we'll be providing controls to avoid that problem of accidentally deleting people right off the bat. Yeah, this is also for B2E. Yeah, it's just that we've optimized some scenarios for the guest users to make it streamlined. But for B2E, you can do it for members of a group or any body in there, right? So now we've showed the access review. So first we did terms of use, the access your policies. Now they've come, you have a recurring process for regular users or guests. How do you make sure that you are certifying or testing to their access within the directory? We know there's the biggest risk though is what do you do with privileged users? Almost every company you talk to, they say, oh, the business unit brought in some contractors to come build some funky website and now we don't know how to manage these people, right? So for privileged users, we need additional levels of control or additional level of lifecycle management on them. We introduced privileged identity management last year for AD roles. We are going to now add that same capability for roles or people with roles in Azure RBAC, Azure resources, so contributor role, etc. And in that case, we even have more in-depth control over it around being able to set expiration, that assignment of that user to the role is not permanent. It's time limited. They are only assigned for 3 months, and after that, you just get removed from the role, right? Unless they go re-request access or renewal of their permission. So the system will automatically age out their permissions from that directory. Or you can time limit them and also require them to JIT whenever they need to activate to go do a privilege operation. So that's another level of control that we are bringing to the privilege access. Yeah. We don't have separation of duties right now, but something that we're going to add, where you can say, hey, I don't want people to be in these two roles at the same time, or somebody with global with help desk admin cannot be global admin, because then they can go change people's password and start reusing them, etc. But to show you the Azure back, let Mark walk you through and see some of the controls that we have there to time limit and do the activation. You can also then require approvals for those JIT elevations.
Yep. So, I mean, you've probably seen some of the privileged identity management for the enterprise scenarios, but we also now have this not just for the Office 365 roles, but also now in a private preview for Azure. So again, this works for employees as well as for contractors and guests, and some of our other scenarios for device management as well. So I can pick, for example, a role within an Azure subscription. So let's go down here to, let's say, contributor role. Now, some things you can already do in Azure. I can go and add a user to a contributor role. That's fine, and they're permanently on that role forever. But I could also do something now that's a little bit more fine-grained. So I could pick a particular user. Let's just try it myself. Here I am. And then we can set some more constraints on that. So rather than just saying, well, Mark's now permanently always a contributor, he can take down the website whenever he wants, I can say it's just in time. So if he wants to be working in this site, he has to activate. This is a big thing for a lot of organizations where, as you probably see, people who are doing development sometimes inadvertently publish to the production site rather than to their test or staging site, and interesting things happen. You can also, is to come back to the point before, say, well, I don't want this person in the role forever. This person's the contractor. They're going to end, let's say, December 1st. And so I don't want to have to remember to come in on December 2nd and take their permission out and go make sure all this happens. Let's just make sure that is going to end automatically. So now that user is limited. They only are in this role when they explicitly ask to be in this role. We can say they have to give a justification. We'll be adding approvals for this as well, so that people can't just start messing around with Azure things without any adult supervision. And we can also then limit how long that lasts. Furthermore, we also are lighting up some more audit capabilities, because the thing that people always want to know, what did they do in this role? So we can see, for example, a user, and when they're activating into that role, we can see the details about that. And we can also see what they're doing at the time that they were in that role. So last week I was going through and having this user go in and try activating and deactivating the role, and then I could see what they did. So they went in here to this Azure resource, Ignite Moon, and they started a virtual machine. So if someone is asking, oh, why does this user have Azure rights? What are they doing with that? Do they still need access? We have this audit trail available for that, so that then you can surface this up and show this to an auditor, or in the future we'll be showing this as part of the access review experience when you're reviewing on a subscription. Do these people still need subscription access? Well, look, they're starting and stopping VMs fairly regularly. That indicates they probably have a strong need to keep using it.
Does this include session recording?
So this is not session recording in the traditional sense of recording every click that they do or whatever, how they move their mouse around. But it gives you an audit trail of the specific actions that it took against the resources in Azure. So it gives
Still fairly coarse-grained.
great, yeah, that's fine. Right, and so that's one area that we think, for guests that are going into companies, helping them build infrastructure, etc. There's another layer that we are providing around governance around them and their life cycle, where you can time limit them, like Mark showed. If their contract ends on a particular day, you set them and automatically the system takes care of it. It all goes into the audit logs, right? So you can say, oh, this user got added for this duration, and when that duration hit, they got removed from it, right? Access reviews could have been doing the ongoing, review and attestation process also on there. So that's another new capability that we've provided in private preview.
So is that usage slash audit data, is that available? Can you get to that program?
Yeah, it will all be in the audit log, so you'll be able to get at it, right? And all the Azure AD audit logs get exportable. So
Well, answering the question, who has access to what, and are they using it?
Yep.
Are they using a part of it?
yep, exactly, right. Okay, so that's one thing. And so over time, we are going to build more capabilities on this, right? We talked earlier about the on-premises applications. We don't have that right now, but we keep hearing requests about it. So then how do you provision that guest access to on-premises system? I know Sarat's team is writing some guidance around how guests access or provision to on-premise system. And then we'll look at how do we bring that governance to those on-premises applications also. We don't have that yet, right? The other thing that we'll look at is, sir.
Are all these events between like the access management and everything, are those, or will they be tied into the grid?
Would-
So basically,
Yeah.
everything we're talking about auditing all the
Yeah.
events, and all these lifecycle things seems like, again, great candidates for feeding into the Azure event grid so that we can do whatever we want.
Yeah, so we're feeding these events into the common Azure audit logging story so that things we write out from here can be published out as well. Now, we only want to go beyond that. That audit logging is more for theme style integration.
Yeah.
There's more things that we want to do, and we're looking at how we leverage what we already have in Azure to drive a lot of these recurring processes and to also kick out ongoing notifications. So there will be some more Azure integrations beyond
But the
pure
Azure
AD.
event grid specifically, it just gone out like a month or so ago. So we have to think of what's the right way to expose the capabilities, or is it OMS rather that we provide a way to hook into OMS or not? We don't have an answer yet. That's something we have to look at.
What's the timeline for this?
So what I showed you right now, we're in private preview. Within the next few weeks, we hope to announce public preview of them.
And what about pricing? Is this going to be a la carte pricing for some of this, or is it going to be embedded in?
It will be embedded in the two SKUs. So the terms of use stuff would be, because the conditional access will be in the premium capability. The access review stuff will be in the P2 SKU. There was a hand up here earlier. Okay, so that's the first thing, access on-premises app. We talked about the group owners. Lever scenarios is one thing that we're also looking at, right? So right now we talked about how we do this stage thing. They get a disabled state, and then per policy, you go delete them. But increasingly, we hear some different requirements for adding additional policies around what to do when they're in the disabled state. Do you start sending them a bunch of reminders, and after n reminders, no response, do you delete them or not, right? So those are additional things that we are looking at adding, where you guys can use our APS to get us some of this data and actually provide a lot more value for customers in that instance. The last piece is sponsors, tracking sponsors around organization. We don't have a good way today to associate who is the sponsor for a company. Let's say Microsoft is working with Intel on something. Intel may be working with different parts of the organization of Microsoft, right? So who is the sponsor? Is it one sponsor per guest or multiple potential sponsors? And then how do you review and figure out when that user's access should end within a particular tenant? Those are some things that we don't have good solutions for, that we're looking at how we go enable that, right? So those are specific guest scenarios. Basically, over time, what we want to do as part of this whole governance thing is consistent joiner, mover, leaver scenarios. How do the guests join? Sarah talks about the use the B2B experience. We have the self-service portal thing on GitHub. How do we bring that into the product itself so you have a consistent way? Whether you bring people on a one-off basis or when you do tenant friending, how do you have people within the tenant then actually come in and self-provision themselves? Or does it go to a manager or sponsor that invites people where there's no IT involvement? So a lot of scenarios that we're going to add to make that process of managing guests and driving the accountability down in the organization to business users versus all being IT with appropriate controls on it. It's something we're going to do.
Have you thought through any of the automatic ways of handling some of this? I mean, scale with large
Yep.
enterprises, I can see this getting a little bit unwieldy, either creation of
Yep.
these rules or even the consumption of these rules to the people who are going to log and
Yep.
look at them.
Absolutely.
If I have 1,000 emails that show up in my inbox, the
Yep.
attestation as part of the problem.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the key principles that we have is all the capabilities that we do in the UI, you'll be able to do it through Graph APIs. So we'll have Graph APIs for you to be able to do that so that you can automate that process. And the joiner, mover, leaver, one thing we didn't talk about is more movement. Let's say there's a guest in the organization and they were working with a particular division. Now their contract ended, but then they're so good that they got hired in another division. How do you manage their permissions and their rights in a different organization within that same company? So we're going to look at the mover capabilities and what entitlements people should have in there. So that's something that we are also working on. And as we do that consistently, there's going to be lots of users, lots of data. So we are going to heavily invest in machine learning to help do more predictive assignment of entitlements or recommendations. For example, if a guest is part of an organization, tenant friending, or to the same sponsor, ideally we should be able to provide in their entitlements automatically without having to have somebody approve them, right? Or if one particular guest in the organization is acting very differently or accessing things differently than other people, we should generate appropriate alerts so that somebody can go take a look at why is this particular guest actually accessing these resources or logging to these things that no other guest in that group is that appropriate or not, right? We're talking to a customer last week where some of the alerts that we are generating in privilege identity management actually help them detect a compromise, that one of their vendors actually had been compromised and was creating global admins in their tenant, right? And so that alert fired to say, hey, people are being added to global admin outside of vendor. Go and delete it, and guess what? No. After an hour, somebody goes and create it, right? So they detected that piece and then they're able to start remediating. So we're going to look at more ways to sort of handle those life cycle things and how people actually debug and manage those anomalous behavior to reduce risk in the environment. Because ultimately, I think what it comes down to, who has access to what, right? So knowing who the people are, whether in the UI or APIs will provide out, what are they doing? We'll do it mostly through the audit capabilities and the access highlights and insights that we use to drive things like access reviews, etc. The effective controls, we are going to provide more policies and features like these in the system. And then you'll be able to then show it in reports or other information for the auditors to prove that, yes, you have the right control on your guest users and their life cycle within the organization. So that's where we are heading towards. And, if you're interested, or we will contact us. You can get in a private preview in a couple of weeks. We'll announce public preview so yourself and your customers can play with it. Additional questions, etc. I've kind of run out over time, but hope that's okay since we started late. Additional questions, comments, thoughts? Are we doing the things that your customers care about or no? Let's start with when we come here. So on the first case, the point I made was that we don't have a great UI-based experience for all those other applications. However, we'll provide APIs for you to be able to bring those in and manage. So that's one. In the second case, in terms of more finer grained permissions and stuff, that's something on our roadmap that within the next year, so we'll be able to show you some of those capabilities. It won't be there in the next 2 weeks also. Okay, thanks for your time. Next slide. I think, evaluation, please go, do the evaluation and some feedback. And if you have questions, feel free to reach me or Mark. We'll be at Ignite also, so if you'll be there, stop by. We can chat more about specific scenarios that you may need to help your customers that we may not have thought about, or things that you think we should do to help you. Feel free to let us know, and we'll be around for a while today too. So thanks for coming.